Hello guys, this is gonna be tutorial number 7 in our beginner Sidescroller Godot series. In this tutorial we are gonna be implementing health. And oh my gosh, Steam is attacking me with news. Okay, so as I was saying, basically we are gonna be implementing a health system into our game. We're gonna be adding like UI and stuff. We're gonna go over that. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to go to our File Explorer. And you want to go to wherever you saved your tutorial assets, because we're going to be using the player health image right here. This health image, and we're going to drag that in here. Now you can see when I preview it, it's pretty small, but let's look. You can see that there's empty hearts, then there's 1 heart, 2 hearts, and 3 hearts. And this is actually a, what's it called? This is a sprite sheet. So this is actually 3 different images. If you slice it right here and right here, these are 3 different ones. So yeah. And we're going to be sending the frame of these images to our game. So just drag it from here into our file system right here. And once you have that in, we're going to organize this. So I'm going to right click on this res path thing right here. And I'm going to do new folder. And I'm going to call this folder UI. This is where we're going to store all of our UI stuff. I'm going to create another folder under this UI folder. Right here, new folder, and I'm going to call it player. Actually, I'm just going to call it player health. Okay, I'm going to open this UI folder by pressing this little arrow right here, and you can see we have our player health. I'm just going to drag this PNG and put it right there, the image. So now I can open it, and we have our player health. Okay. So now we have that imported, we need to start actually adding it to our UI. But first, we need to start coding our player to work with health. Because for right now, if we play the game, our player he just gets hit only once and instantly destroys. So we need to make a health system. So I'm going to open the player by pressing this icon right here. And it will open in the editor. So, and I'm going to open the script right here. Okay. Now, with this, what we're going to do... Ooh, I've already had this variable in here. So I kind of already briefly went over this tutorial before, and I screwed it up, so I'm restarting. So you don't have to do this. I'm just removing all the stuff I had before that I don't need. And okay, so kind of ignore what I just did there. You're gonna want to create a separate variable, and calling it variable health. Obviously equal to 3. Okay, and let's see here. I'm just looking to see okay, so what we had in here before we destroyed it, so I'm implementing the code what I had before, so you guys don't need to follow along right here again. I'm sorry, I kind of screwed this up. I had the player queue free itself, because what happened is I had it, so just don't follow any of the setup, and this was actually below here, if I believe. Oops. This here, and oh yeah, I emit signal instance node. Again, don't follow along, I just kind of screwed stuff up. Particles global position. Okay, now you can follow along. So basically we have this code here where when we collide with an enemy, it finds the enemy, it creates the particles at the enemy, and we emit our signal to create particles, we destroy the enemy, and we destroy ourselves. Problem with this is now we need a health system, so we have our health variable in here. And what we're going to do instead of destroying ourselves, so what we can do is I'm going to remove Q free and remove the instance particles signal, because we're not destroying the player yet, therefore we don't want to create the particles yet. So I'm just going to do health minus equals 1. I'm just going to save this, and now we need to check if the player's health goes below or equals 0 in the process, because the process happens every frame. So every frame we want to check if health is less than or equal to 0. And if it is, we will do emit signal. We're going to do our instance node. The node we want to instance is our particles, and we global position. So we want to instance the particle node at our global position, so our player gets destroyed. And I'm gonna do, what's it called, Q free to destroy our player. So we check if health is less or equal to 0, we create our particles at our position, and we destroy ourselves. And so what you want to make sure that this is actually player destroy particles and not just the enemy destroy particles, because the player destroy particles actually restart the game, and if you have it set to the enemy one, it won't restart the game and you'll have issues. If you do it in the enemy, if you have the player destroy particles in the enemy, whenever you shoot an enemy, it'll reset the game. So make sure you have the enemy destroy particles preloaded in the enemy. Just trying to clear stuff up so you don't have any issues in the future. So now if we play it, let's see if this works. We have our ship, moves around, shoots enemy, they blow up. If I get hit by one, oh, we destroy 1, 2, 3, and then we blew up. So that works pretty well. And it restarted. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to have to make sure that our health works. We're going to have to do the health UI. Sorry. So go in our world, hit 2D, and I'm going to full screen it. And to do UI, you can do a canvas layer, because in probably the next tutorial or so, I'm not sure I'm pretty sure we're doing like screen shake. We'll see though. We're gonna have a camera, so we need to make sure the UI stays with the camera when the camera moves. And so to do that, we're gonna need a canvas layer. So I'm just gonna open canvas layer, and oh, also the tutorial assets in the description. I might have a lot of other assets and sounds and stuff. Don't worry about those. We'll need them in the tutorials later, but we don't need them now, so you won't need to worry about them. Back to the canvas layer. So what the canvas layer does is it draws everything over everything. So it'll draw UI and all the child nodes under it over everything. So even if the camera moves, it will stay in the same place in the on the screen. So if the camera moves, it won't move with it. I mean, it will move with it, but it won't. It's not going to go off the camera or anything. That's basically what's happening. So I'm going to make a sprite under this, and we're going to call it player underscore health. And we're going to attach the texture. And we're going to use this player health.png. And this is the texture we're going to be using. So I'm going to click and hold, drag it all the way over here. Oh, I accidentally cancel that. I accidentally clicked off of it. So I can click on it again, and then I can drag it, because I selected the health and it changed the inspector. So now we have that. So just make sure Your hearts is the texture. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go into animation. And so what this does is we can start slicing the sprites by doing this. So horizontal frames. If I hit this button, you'd see it just suddenly got shorter. If I hit 3, 4, so we have 4 frames. We have 1 frame with no hearts, 1 frame with 1 heart, 1 frame with 2 hearts, 1 frame with 3. And so essentially when we click the horizontal frame button right here, if we click this, essentially what it's doing is it's just splitting the sprite into more sections. So it creates 4 sections of frames. And the horizontal axis, that's the horizontal frames. We're not using any vertical frames in this animation, but we do have our horizontal frames. Now you can change the frames. So 0, you see no health. 1, we see 1 health, and 2, we see 2 health, and 3, we see 3. And so this will correspond. The frame number will correspond to the player's actual health variable, which works nicely. And I'm going to position this where I want it. So I'm going to move this like down here to the corner. Like it right there. And it's a bit too small. So I'm just going to set the scale to like 1.5 by 1.5. And some of this stuff will change depending on your image. But you'll need a sprite, sprite sheet. And if you have multiple frames in your image, you could probably download it as a sprite sheet in your program if you're doing your own sprites. It's kind of different, yeah, if you're doing your own, but if you're using these ones, it should be exactly the same one I'm doing right here. Okay, so now we need a player health frame to actually correspond with the player. And to do that, we need to get a reference from the player in our global. So I'm going to search for a global script, which runs in every single scene, and we don't have a reference to the player. So how is the player health going to get the frame of the player if it doesn't know where the player is? So this is where we're going to create our player variable, just like the world variable. Var player equals null, which null means it does not exist. So at the start of the game, the player won't exist. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to go in my player scripts now, and function underscore ready means when the player is created, we want to set global dot player equals self. So now the node exists because we just set it to self, so that variable is this node now. And now I'm going to create another function underscore under the ready function, and it's going to be function exit tree. And what we're going to do here is set global.player equal to null. And I'm going to save. So what this means is that the player does not exist. So if the player gets destroyed, that calls the exit tree function, which sets player to null. So then we know that other objects can't access that. So that's the only reason why we're using exit tree, is so we don't get errors whenever the player doesn't exist, so we can actually check for it. Exit tree also happens when you move to another scene and that player doesn't exist anymore, so it technically will just equal to null because it's not in that tree. Even though it didn't get destroyed, it moved to a new scene, which the player isn't there. So that's how this works. So now we need to actually reference our players. We have a player reference, but we're not actually referencing it in the player health. So in our player health right here, I'm going to attach a new script by pressing this button right here. And I'm just going to select that. And I don't want it in the world folder. So I'm going to press the folder icon right here. And and right now we're in the world folder, but we want to go folder out of it. So to do that, press this little arrow right here. It goes to the parent folder. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to UI right here. And we're going to go in our player health folder. And we're going to press open, because that's the folder we want to save it now. And we're going to press the create button right here. Okay, so now we have our player health.gd script in here. So I'm just going to remove all this auto-generated script stuff. And what we're going to do is function underscore process. Remember, this happens every single frame. And I want to do frame, which is the frame of the sprite, so we could change how much hearts the sprite has depending on the frame, equals global dot player dot health. So we're setting our frame, every frame, basically every step of the game, every frame this happens, we're setting our frame equal to the global, the global's variable player dot health, and the variable in player dot health. So now we have our frame just being set to our player's health. The only issue with this though is if our player doesn't exist, it can't get that health variable and we'll get an error. So to prevent that, we're going to do an if statement. If global.player is not equal to null. And I'm going to tab this over. So what this does right here, what this does right here is it checks if our player exists. If our player does not equal null, and that's what this exclamation mark means right here, not, in programming language this always means not. If it is not null, which means it exists, because if it's not null, then it must be set to the player variable. If it's not null, then we could set our frame. So it exists, we set our frame. If it doesn't exist, we do not set our frame. That's what happens in this if statement. And I'm going to save, and we can run it, and let's see if this works. Okay, we have 3 hearts right here. Oh, we lost 1, we lost 2, and we blow up. So that works pretty well. Want to go over one last thing. I'm gonna switch over back to my 2D scene right here, and you can see that we automatically set to 3 health, but you can have the frame at 1, 2 health or 1 health. It doesn't matter because it's always set to the player's actual health. So I'm just setting it back to 3 so I get kind of a visual representation of how big this is. But that's basically the health system. So thanks for watching this video. I hope you guys learned something new, and come back for the next one. See ya.